Dear students, staff, faculty, distinguished guests, and friends, welcome to our Impact Speaker Series featuring Neeraj Tolmare, Senior Vice President and CIO of the Coca-Cola Company. This is our second of our Impact Speaker Series this semester, which has allowed us to showcase outstanding leaders, their journeys and perspectives on contemporary issues in business practices. My name is Willie Reddick. I'm the Associate Dean of Business Education. I'm also an Associate Professor of Accounting, and I'm also a graduate of the PhD program here at the Whitman School. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral land Syracuse now stands. We're excited to host another amazing business professional event. The reason why we're doing this and filling the Linder Auditorium is quite simple. By integrating industry into what business does, into what Whitman does, helps us prepare our students for what lies ahead. It builds bridges and global leaders who help to provide insight into the types of challenges and opportunities that are taking place within the business industry. It helps to reinforce how the education that is taking place in the classroom is applicable to the real world. Having top executives share their perspectives from the top helps to reinforce positive role models and inspire about what it takes to be successful in business. And ultimately, it's about making an impact on the education of our Whitman students to help them see how they can be part of the business landscape of the future. At this point, I'd like to transition the talk to Dean Alex McKelvey, who will now introduce our speaker and start today's discussion.
Thanks very much, Willie. Okay, applause. It's okay. Delighted for all you guys to be here today. Thank you so much for coming to join us, Neeraj. We're going to have a conversation about a variety of topics, not least dealing with artificial intelligence, business analytics, and talking about issues about leading a global firm. Our run of show today is I have a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask Neeraj, and then towards the end, we're going to turn it over to you, the audience, the students, to ask the questions that are most pertinent to your mind. And in about an hour from now, once we conclude our conversation, everyone's invited to come upstairs to the Flom Grand Hall, where we'll have a social opportunity to meet Neeraj personally, ask follow-up questions, and also enjoy each other's company. Great. Neeraj, first to you. You've had an illustrious career. You've been the CIO of Coca-Cola. Before that, you've been the head of digital innovation at Coca-Cola. You've had other jobs at Fortune 100 companies, household names to everyone here in this room. Can you kind of give us a little bit of the backstory of how you got to where you are today with a couple of highlights that are the most important ones in your career?
Sure. Thank you for that. And before I start, I want to really acknowledge the people in the room here and thank you for giving your time today to listen to both of us have a conversation. Hopefully it adds to answers some questions for you, and if you have any questions, obviously we have some time later today. But look, I mean, I didn't start my career thinking one day I'll be sitting here as the CIO of a multinational company talking to all of you. That's not how the journey began, and I'm sure that's how it begins for all of us. In fact, when I walked into the room today, I was telling Megan, my partner and colleague, that it instantly took me back to my college days. And I was sitting, as all of you are sitting here, listening to somebody speak. And it was the first day of business school. And the gentleman who was speaking was Jack Welch. Now, most of you in the room probably don't know who Jack Welch is. You should Google him. He was a well-known business entity, business person back in the day. But his words still ring true. And his guidance to the room back then was build breadth in your experience. And when pushed a little bit further, he explained that doing multiple things, having an experience of doing various things in your career allows you to get a 360 view of how a business operates, how a business runs. And in that journey, you can find out which one of those areas are you more passionate about. And that's what happened to me. I began my journey. I'm originally from India, grew up in India, came to the United States, almost 3 decades ago, and started working. Went to business school and then got into the professional world. And I knew that it was the beginning of my journey, and I knew very little. I think there was a realization that I have a lot to learn. And that's something that has always stayed close to me throughout my growing up years, is I always want to learn. I'm very curious, and I think that curiosity is very important. Even to this day, if there's one thing I would look back and offer as advice is stay curious, because that curiosity forces you to learn new things in areas that you don't know. And then you can find yourself learning more about it and figure out if that's something is your calling. So I went through various journeys. I worked for numerous companies. I gravitate towards consumer brands. That's something that I've always felt passionate about. So I worked for HP before I came to Coca-Cola, which is again a global company, well-known brand. I worked for a startup called Palm. Most of you probably have never heard of the name, but that's the company that coined the term smartphone. And if you ask your parents, if you mention Palm Pilot, they will nod, right? There are a few people sitting here in the front, closer to my age, saying, yes, we know what that is, right? Worked for Pandora, the music company, as an advisor for some time. And I took different roles. Every 2 years, I intentionally forced into a new area that I was completely unaware of. And it's a bit daunting when you want to go into an area that you don't know anything about. But I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of wanting to learn new things. And I tend to gravitate towards the more difficult things first, because my approach is if you do the difficult things, then the rest becomes easy. So I always look for the biggest problem that needs to be solved, and usually I'm the first person to raise my hand saying, hey, I'm going to try my hand at it. And the reason I think I've had some level of success in my career is because I've managed to not be afraid of failing. And it's really important. It's a very profound way of looking at doing something new, because failure and the thought of failure can get in your way and prevent you from stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I've always reminded myself, if I feel comfortable doing what I'm doing, that means I'm not pushing myself enough. I'm not stepping outside of the comfort box, and that then is an indication that I'm not learning. So then that journey has slowed down. So I remind myself and get back into it. So you mentioned AI. We're all new to AI, and we're all learning, but nowadays I find myself reading whatever is out there on this topic and implementing it as quickly as we can. I also believe in learn by doing. You cannot learn by looking at a PowerPoint chart. In the corporate world, you can only go so far by looking at something. You have to actually do things yourself and do it so quickly enough in cycles where if it's not working out, then you pivot and you learn from it and move to something else. So that philosophy has come in handy as I have traversed through my career. And I've worked for various different companies for different roles. I never really started out in technology. I've run businesses before, I've run P&Ls for big brands, but technology has always been the common denominator through all of those roles. So I knew all along that technology is something that, whether I like it or not, is going to play an important role in our lives. And I think it's evident today than it was ever before. It doesn't matter what business you're doing, whether it's a consumer business or otherwise, technology is an integral part. Whether you're in marketing, whether you're in finance, whether you're sales or supply chain, any part of a corporate business, technology is at the foundation of it. So I think as you look to start of your careers, it's important to recognize the role that technology plays in all of these businesses. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be a coder or a developer. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's important to know enough about what role of an enabler is technology playing in the area of business that I'm passionate about. And the more you're knowledgeable about it, the more better capable you will be at learning in that space.
Great. So I want to come back to artificial intelligence and technology. But first, at the end of your journey is now your current position, CIO, so Chief Information Officer. That's a relatively new title for corporations, especially a global corporation like Coca-Cola. So what does a Chief Information Officer actually do? What are the main areas of responsibility? How would you summarize that current position?
Yeah, the role itself has evolved. The title means different things to different businesses. I actually categorize it as three major areas. It's a role of an operator. So you need to make sure that the business is running and operating seamlessly. Everything runs, when you come into the work, turn the switch on, lights come on, everything is working. We have hundreds of manufacturing plants around the world. My team is responsible for making sure those are up and running. At any given time, if anything breaks, we are accountable. We have hundreds of systems that maintain those manufacturing plants. We have logistics, complicated logistics around the world. Coca-Cola is probably one of the world's largest fleet of trucks in the world. We want to make sure the routes and the logistics behind it and the warehousing that it's connected to, the production lines that it's connected to, all operate digitally in today's world. One job is to make sure you're an operator. That is a prerequisite of the role. And that's what it used to be up until 5 years ago. That's all it used to be, which is not a bad thing. But as technology is now becoming more prevalent in other parts of the business, that role is evolving. And there are two other components that get added to it. And the two ones that I think is the role of an innovator. You have to think outside of the box. You have to think of how can technology make life simpler and easier. Is there a business process that can be simplified by leveraging the latest tools that are available? And the third one, which is really important, is you're a change agent within the corporation. It is expected these days of people who are in the technology space to be provoking the organization to think differently. So my job is to really challenge the organization. And at Coca-Cola, it's very interesting because we are a company that's very few companies that are part of the 3-century club. We are 138 years old, highly successful business, probably the world's most iconic and most well-known brand. And we have been successful for all these years to change your way of doing certain thing doesn't come easy, because there's a lot of people that will say, well, everything's working, why change? And we're making a ton of money, the business is profitable. I think the role of a technologist is to look ahead and say that the world that we're going to that we are facing today and are going to face tomorrow is going to look very different because of the advent of AI. And that change agent role is what a new CIO has to play. So the role has evolved, but I think those are the three categories I would put it in.
Great. So especially the innovator and the change agent, I think is a lot of the inspiration for where we want to go with our conversation. So we've touched on AI. Let's dig into that. So artificial intelligence is central to Coca-Cola. You recently engaged in a $1.1 billion partnership with Microsoft. There's a number of initiatives underway at Coca-Cola. Can you kind of highlight some of the work that you've been doing in artificial intelligence and how Coca-Cola sees the future of AI?
Yeah. So for the Coca-Cola Company, everything we do, we keep our consumer at the heart of it. For any successful brand, if you look at any successful brands around the world, your consumer has to be at the heart of everything you do. You're doing it for your consumer. If you lose sight of that, the brand loses its appeal. And the reason Coca-Cola has been so successful over a century now is because that has stayed true. That's who we are. That's ingrained into the culture of Coca-Cola. When it comes to AI, look, AI has been around for a long time. AI is not something that's new. AI was always there. It's compute that has gotten cheaper, which allows us to play around with this technology and apply it in day-to-day lives. The generative component of AI, yes, that's the new part, right? There's a difference between AI, regular AI, and the generative part of it is the creative side of things, is what generative AI brought to bear. And we were one of the pioneers, not just in the CPG industry, but any industry around the world. This was back in late 2022, even when the world did not know OpenAI as they know that today. There was nothing called ChatGPT around. We were actually partnered with OpenAI even prior to that. So January of 2023, we had launched ChatGPT internally to all Coca-Cola employees inside our Azure environment, fully protected and safe. I know someone earlier mentioned cybersecurity, so we'll talk about a little that later. But we recognize that this technology is not just a shiny object that we have to chase for some time and it'll go away till we look at something else. It is a revolutionary technology. It is going to, in my opinion, fundamentally change the way we live our lives and the way a corporation looks at a business. It is that profound. So we had to learn, and as shared earlier, learn by doing. There's no better way to learn than to just start doing it. So we established a small group in my organization under the title of Emerging Technologies. And this group was set up with one idea, is that you must fail within 6 weeks. You have to take an idea and you have to fail within 6 weeks. Because past 6 weeks, if you have not failed, you're going to scale this idea and it's going to become incremental value to the company. So it's a unique way of looking at solving a problem because you're time boxed. So you have to quickly determine, is there enough there in the idea and is it going to scale? And if not, let's move on to the next one. So you iterate very quickly. And with AI, we implemented it across the enterprise. So we tried to figure out what can AI do to bring efficiencies for our associates, thousands and thousands of associates around the world. How can we make it easier for them to do their jobs? That was one vector. Second one, we said our customers. Our customers are the mom and pop stores or the Walmarts or the Costcos of the world, that the retailers who keep our products. How can we make it easy for them to distribute our products, to sell our products to the consumers? And then the third aspect was to our broad consumer base. How do we create a much more personalized connection with an individual consumer? Today's marketing technologies goes by demographics. You have different groups of demographics and you market to a demographic. But with AI, with generative AI, you can actually market to an individual. That's the beauty. And I'll share some examples of what the company has done that we have learned through that. In 2023, I think the film that was playing outside when I walked in is called Masterpiece, which we launched in, it's a award-winning film at Cannes at 2023. We combined live action, 3D animation, and generative AI algorithms that we have, which we have trained on our own data. When you combine all of that, we realized that you could create a digital asset that is of extreme high quality, and you can do it at very less cost and at 1/10 the time that it takes to create that asset in the regular ways. So we took some proprietary art that Coca-Cola owned, and we offered it to creative personalities around the world. And we said, can you add to this asset using the generative AI algorithms that we have created? And now we will give you a chance to display that in digital billboards all around the world. And the result was what we created, right? And it showed that we could actually create content in condensed time frame and at 1/10 of the cost that it takes to run these large programs. But this time we took it one step further. 2 days ago, we launched our Christmas campaign, global campaign, Create Real Magic. You can Google it. And it's an interactive session. So it has text to video. So you can type something and it generates a video. And it's as realistic as you can imagine. And it took couple guys to build it together, as opposed to an army of agencies trying to put it together in the old world of marketing. And the concept is you can talk to a digital avatar of Santa Claus and record your conversations or music that you'd like to send to your loved ones over Christmas. And that converts it into a snow globe that you can then gift to your family member with your conversations, your messages for a holiday season, or whatever, however you want to personalize it. And you can scan a QR code off of our bottle or a can and enable you to do that. So this is a highly interactive session that you can have with the brand. And it's only possible because of the technologies that are available today. The technology is evolving, and we are learning fairly quickly along with that. So that's on the consumer side of things that we've done. And the response has been amazing, right? People all over the world are interacting with this. I'll give you another example. We partnered with NVIDIA recently and created a platform called ShopX. So what happens is today we have more than 30 million outlets around the world. And that means every day we have to there's an opportunity to create more than 1 million messages, personalized, customized messages to those outlets. There's no way we can do that today. There's no technology that allows us until generative AI came knocking on the door. So with ShopX, we took 20 assets, digital assets, and we made 10,000 variations of those assets based in different languages, different ethnicities for all over the world. We were able to do it in 20% of the time that it takes to run this kind of a campaign, and hardly any cost with a small group of really smart individuals. So things that we could never imagine we could be able to do to interact with a consumer on a one-on-one basis, we're able to do that with generative AI. So I think it's a phenomenal technology. It's going to change the world of marketing completely. And Coca-Cola is at the front end of that. No one is doing this that I'm aware of. We are the very first ones partnering with major players in the industry like Microsoft, like NVIDIA, like OpenAI. We have exclusive partnerships with all of these companies where my engineers get access to the algorithms more than 2-3 quarters before GA, before general availability. That means GPT-5 is available almost a year ago. We were playing with it. So I think that access comes because your brand has such amazing reach into the consumer base. So there are a lot of different ways you can implement AI. One more example, and then I'll pause and we can talk further on other topics. But on the customer side, I know there's probably some students who are interested in data and what can data do to the field. So as I mentioned, we have 30+ million outlets all around the world. We have an ability today, because of generative AI algorithms and the training, we have trained those algorithms with our data. We can actually predict what is the next best SKU in a cooler sitting in an outlet in Mexico City. And we can predict that the sales of that outlet is going to go up 6% every month over month, because we can predict what is the SKU that a consumer is going to walk in and buy. So now the outlet owner can only stock the SKUs that are going to sell. Before, we used to just stock everything up and hope that someone walks in and picks up a Coca-Cola or a Fanta or a Sprite or a Smart Water. But now we have the ability to tell him that on the top shelf, put Coke Zero. On the middle shelf, put Fanta, because our data is telling us that that's what the next consumer walking in is going to buy. So he'll never be out of stock. He'll only purchase what he can sell, and his sales have now gone up. And he gets that message on his WhatsApp, customized to him as an individual. That's the power of generative AI. And now we're pushing the boundaries into agentic AI. I'm sure most of you have been reading about the topic if you're interested. That's the new frontier. Can we create agents that can actually make decisions on your behalf? Can we train these agents to make those decisions? We're already experimenting with that. So the possibilities are endless in that space.
Now this is wonderful because I think obviously Coca-Cola is an iconic brand, but I don't think a lot of students or the general public would understand the depth of technology innovation that Coca-Cola uses on a regular basis, especially at scale to get a lot of that marketing out there. Now, the success of generative AI, and especially in these global areas, as Coca-Cola is well known for being pretty much everywhere, being available pretty much anywhere on the planet. Knowing that there's different levels of infrastructure, technological readiness, and the reliance on good data to be able to make these types of strong algorithms that you're using, how do you manage that? How do you work on getting that right data in a place where there is no infrastructure, there's probably not a lot of good data, and it's really hard to get to?
Yeah. So look, our manufacturing plants are usually in remote locations around the world. So it's difficult logistically to get the latest and greatest technology down to those remote areas. Mm-hmm. So we do rely on our ability to run things in a hub and spoke model. If we have a certain base from where we can run most of our technology and then can deliver it seamlessly to that particular region. I mean, we have the ability to move our data from one country to another within seconds. We are a 100% cloud company. That's one of the first things I did when I joined Coca-Cola. We retired our data centers, and we're 100% in the cloud. And we're intentionally a hybrid cloud company, so we use Microsoft Azure, AWS, as well as GCP. We use all three cloud solutions. Being in the cloud allows us to move our data seamlessly from one place to another. So that's certainly a factor. But then just having data is not good enough. Almost every company will tell you today that we have all the data we can ever think of or want. We just don't know what to do with it. Right? That's the real problem, that are you getting your data to give you the insights that you need to grow your business? And that is the holy grail. I'm not going to sit here and say that we have cracked the code on it. We still have a lot of work to do, but we are making a ton of progress on that. We have created a single repository for all of our data to be housed. So we can then mine that data with the right algorithms and come up with the right insights that can be applied instantly on the ground for decisions that will grow our business. So that's pretty much how we operate.
Okay. So given all the novelty, the uncertainty, and I think a lot of people are sometimes afraid and have, especially as business owners, there's some nervousness about a push towards sharing all the data, having everything on the cloud. As a global leader, how have you managed a lot of these challenges? So what's your philosophy for managing and getting people on board with a lot of this new technology, which might be very scary for them?
Yeah, look, I think risk to your data is real. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. We have that risk too. I think you mentioned cybersecurity is key to doing business today, and we lean into it intentionally quite heavily. We have probably one of the most robust cybersecurity systems that I've seen in my experience. And quite frankly, we are the target. We're the target of most world because we're the most recognized brand. If you want to make a statement, you pick the most popular name out there and try to do some wrong stuff. So we have to be always, our guard has to be up. We have to deploy the latest technology to prevent the attacks from happening. And when the attacks do happen, how do we react to it? How do we recover from it? So we constantly run simulation war games within the company and look at different scenarios of how that could happen and keep ourselves protected.
You said war games?
Yeah, simulated war games.
What does that look like?
So we actually create an attack and go all the way up to shutting down our manufacturing plants. And shutting down a manufacturing plant is a big deal. I don't know if people are aware, but we do operate at large scales. Coca-Cola does roughly 2.3 billion beverages a day. So that 1/3 of humanity physically touches our product every day. So 10 minutes of interruptions in one of our plants can mean a massive impact. So we actually run these scenarios and figure out if we can recover from it quickly. So that's how we learn.
I don't think people would have thought we would have done that for Coca-Cola. That's fascinating. So, one of the issues also with cybersecurity is the global data, and being able to have everything on the cloud. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage for cybersecurity?
I think it's a definite advantage. Because the kinds of investments that these cloud providers are putting into solutions to protect your data, you wouldn't do that because that's not our core business. Our core business is to make amazing beverages and bring joy and happiness to the world by providing those beverages to you. If you go to a Microsoft, or you go to Palo Alto Networks, or you go to Cisco, or you go to various other companies, they invest in creating those solutions. So it's always good to be on the cloud that is supported by some of those technologies. So I definitely think being in the cloud is an absolute must for having a secure footprint.
Okay. So one of the others where I imagine data really plays an important role is the local customization. So I think everyone knows, Coca-Cola manages hundreds and hundreds of brands, some well known, some are more popular in foreign markets, and some are more popular here in the US. Can you talk about how you use the data to do some local customization and managing all those brands over time?
Yeah, I mean, look, the example I gave earlier about the snow globe that we created, we were able to create that in more than 40 languages just in the onset, in hardly no time at all. That before creating these, used to just take one and then replicate it 20 times over. But with the advent of AI, you can actually do it instantly. That's what the platform that we have with NVIDIA allows us to do. But look, I think we learn from all of these brands all around the world, and we collect that data, and we analyze that data, and it's a loop that feeds back into how is this brand performing in that particular country. And not all the times we get it right. During the pandemic, we recognized that a majority of our brands are actually, as popular as they are, we are not making money. Our CEO called them as zombies, and we killed them. We killed a significant number of our brands from around the world because they weren't making any money. So I think there are some difficult decisions also. The data feeds into that and lets you know that is this actually effective? Are you actually generating revenue from these brands? Because it takes a lot to operate and run those brands and continue to manufacture them. So we constantly look at it. It's a highly data-driven analytical company. It doesn't appear so from the outside. Honestly, when I first came to Coca-Cola, I was coming from HP. I was working on 3D printing and latest technologies. And I come in thought, okay, maybe, how hard is it going to be? They make a sugary beverage. It's a sugary beverage company. I may be able to teach a thing or two. Boy, was I amazed in the first month when I came. I was like, this is an unbelievable system that I was unaware of. The scale is what makes it really interesting and challenging. Because it really operates, we operate in literally every country that exists. I think with the exception of Russia and Cuba and North Korea probably, we operate in every country. Our products may still be available there, but we operate around the world.
So because Coca-Cola is so well known, I think a lot of people assume they know a lot about what happens there. Now that you've been there for a few years, what are some of the biggest surprises about Coca-Cola that you think other people should know?
So I think I'll tell you the ones that surprised me. So I first was surprised by the number of beverages that we provide to our consumer base on a daily basis. I would not have guessed the number to be 2.3 billion every day. That's a massive scale. I actually thought I had done large scale initiatives when I was working for large global brands. Until I came to Coca-Cola, I realized, boy, this is what scale is all about. This defines scale. This is as large as it can get. So that surprised me. But what also surprised me is how this company has managed to stay so successful for such a long time. And what really, when I peel off a few layers, I look at, it's a highly innovative company. Innovation is built into our culture. Experimentation, quick, fast experimentation is built into the culture. Every person is highly innovative in the way they are trained. You wouldn't normally think that. I didn't think that when I was interviewing for the role. But when I came in, I realized that this is why this company is so successful. They disrupt themselves before anyone else can. And that's an amazing achievement for any corporation to have. So I feel privileged to be part of that organization. And look, I mean, there are simple things, facts like the Coca-Cola bottle. I mean, the proliferation of the brand and how much this brand means to people is not, I didn't know that until I got to Coca-Cola. I mean, our glass bottle is the only shape of bottle that even when it's broken, a blind person can actually recognize that it's a Coca-Cola bottle. That's how deeply entrenched the brand is in the society. Now it comes with a responsibility. It comes, that kind of love that we get from the consumer base comes with a responsibility. I know we touched upon sustainability a little bit. It is one of the prime responsibilities of the company. It is one of the top 3 things we believe that is going to create a major impact for us going forward. I mentioned earlier we have the world's largest fleet of trucks. So we have to make sure that the routes are designed correctly and we can optimize the routes, and that way you can save the impact of the fuel that they are using. Our packaging, we had a commitment that our packaging would be 100% recyclable by 2025, and we'll meet those guidelines. The amount of water that we use in our business, it's a significant amount of water. If we can optimize our plants to use the exact right amount of water with least wastage, that creates a great footprint, and our overall carbon footprint in the world reduces. So we take it very seriously and proactively and intentionally lean into it. And sustainability is not a one and done. It's a journey, right? It continues. We just have to keep at it. It's not going to be done, well, let's just do these things and a year from now our job is done. So the company takes it very seriously, and it is a metric for all senior leaders. It is a metric of our success that we get measured at the end of the year, that how you've built sustainability into your day-to-day activities.
Great, thanks also for touching on the sustainability issue. Throughout our conversation, you've mentioned about failing within 6 weeks, lots of experimentation. How is it that you actually foster this culture that can deal with setbacks, that it's not psychologically taxing, that you don't have people who have one setback and give up? How do you encourage that experimentation and failure mentality?
It's not easy. I think as human beings, nobody likes to fail. I think even the word fail kind of creates a psychological response in our brain. I think being comfortable with your own self is the first step. Surrounding yourself by people who you think will protect you from that quick failure that you may have. Having that comfort level is important. So we try to build these principles when we are encouraging our teams, and rewarding people for trying things even if they have failed. I think it's really important, because then you are sending the right signals that, okay, I'm not getting my wrist slapped for trying something that I thought was interesting but it didn't go anywhere. There's a balance, because you don't want to, it's not a charity, right? You're running a business. You don't want to be experimenting all day long and just running different hobbies. So you have to be very careful and strike the right balance. And it's not easy to strike that right balance. Sometimes you over-index one way or the other, and then you have to course correct. But if we just allow people to be who they are, bring your entire self, your true self to work, and create a culture of safety, create a culture of trust and transparency and genuine support, I think it goes a long way. And over time, then your team starts to believe that, okay, here's my goal, but I'm empowered to think, what are the different paths I can get to that goal? And I have the freedom and the luxury to try those things. So it happens over time. Nothing happens overnight, obviously. And we are on that journey. I wouldn't say that we are done, to be perfectly transparent.
Great. So I want to start thinking about handing over to the students to ask their questions. But before I do, I want to ask you, imagine yourself, you're back in the classroom. You're thinking about the career you're going to have, lots of potential, lots of talent. What advice would you give to our students as they're in the beginning stages of launching their careers?
That's a difficult one. I'll tell you how I think about it. I never like to get in the phase of, well, let me give you some advice. I don't think I'm in a position to do that. But what I would look back and what I remember doing, I'll tell you, is wanting to learn new things and never stopping wanting to learn. I think it's very important because in your lifetime, you're going to be faced with lots and lots of new things. And the pace at which those new things are going to come at you is exponentially higher than when we were growing up through school. So I think being open to the idea that it's okay if I don't know exactly what I want to do. Because the path will come in front of you. If you try 6 different things, the right path that you feel passionate about is one of them. And it will come in front of you. I think letting yourself be comfortable with that is an important aspect of growing. And I think the part that gets really sometimes missed in our education system, and I realize that working in the corporate world, is how important it is to have an emotional quotient as opposed to your intelligence quotient. Intelligence quotient is really important, yes, but even more so having a higher EQ, having an ability to read a room, having an understanding of what to say when, how to manage expectations, how to deal with different personalities. I think that is a skill that is extremely important in the corporate world, and one that doesn't get taught I don't know how you would teach that. I think it comes by experience. But I remember every experience I've had, I looked for those opportunities, like, okay, I need to learn that. I don't think I know that. And learning comes from everywhere. Learning comes from this room, from your colleagues, from each other, from your professors, from books, from various areas. I remember sitting in my business school class and I think realizing one of the class, I don't even remember which one, very, very tough class, hardly knew anything about it. And everybody in the class was answering a bunch of questions, and very quickly it became apparent that I had not done any of my homework and I didn't know much what was going on. And I walked away thinking, okay, what's happening here? But then I came to a realization, I just have to be a sponge. I can learn a lot from all the colleagues around me they're all studying, they're all having great ideas. I just have to open my mind to learning from every which way possible. The learning doesn't necessarily just come from reading your books or the articles that come your way. I think it comes from everywhere. It comes from your day-to-day life, the experiences that you have. So allowing yourself to be open to learn and absorb these things goes a long way. That has been my experience. So.
Well, I think that's a great philosophy, especially in such a fast-changing area that you're working in with technology and artificial intelligence. So at this stage, we'll open up the floor to questions. If you have a question, just put up your hand. We have a few mics. We'll walk around there. Please introduce yourself before you ask your question. So please put your hand up, and we'll get a mic coming your way.
Hello, my name is Justin Crooks, and I was just kind of wondering what a typical day looked like for you as a CIO of Coca-Cola, in terms of like waking up, if you have time for free time to do anything but work during the work week, and then also when you go to bed in order to wake up early to be productive and anything like that.
Thank you. It's a work-life balance question that I think it's a hard one to give you a great answer for. I'll give you my answer. I actually suck at work-life balance. I know my colleague here, Megan, would second that. But the reality is, there was a few years back, I came to the realization that I have stopped thinking. I'm just doing. I'm just waking up, following the day-to-day things that come up, and the CIO's day is filled with meetings. Almost all of them are important decisions, business decisions, financial decisions, technology decisions. It's complex decisions, typically decisions that your team is escalating up for you to make. So you have to be on your A game most of the day to do that. But the realization was that I am not learning as much as I should be because I'm not allowing any thinking time in my time frame. So I actually made a resolution a few years back, and nowadays every Friday I have half my day completely free. I've blocked it on my calendar. There's nothing I keep on my calendar, and I keep that exclusively as my thinking time. I don't even read in that time. I'm just thinking out loud on what are the things that I've done through the week, what are the things that I want to do next week, and are those the things that I should be focusing on. And typically in our life we have this, and I call it, somebody smart said it, and I follow that, is the 80-20 rule. There are typically 20% of the activities that you have that have an 80% impact. So if you can just focus on those 20% activities, you pretty much cover 80% of what you want to achieve. And that's good enough. That's quite a lot. So this thinking time that I have created allows me to not only learn, but also to think about, are these the things I should be focusing on? And it has helped me a lot be a better manager, be a better leader to my team, and also be a better individual. And as your life gets busier and busier, you come up with reasons as to why you don't have any time left in the day. And that could be happening even today as students learning different things, that, oh my God, my life is so busy. I have 4 classes, I have this, that, and the other, and I have no time left. I think still there is time. You have to make time. You have to be really thoughtful about it and intentional about it. And if you allow yourself even an hour or 2 of thinking time, it can really orient your career, your future. Is this where I want to go? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to learn? What do I need to focus on? And I think it's probably works well for your overall health and well-being also. So I would highly recommend it. It is working really great for me since I started doing it. Now, to be totally honest, there are days where I've failed at that. Even though I have half a day left free, I've blocked it. I still fill it up with 1 or 2 meetings because something spilled over. But by and large, I've managed to stay disciplined about it, and it is certainly working. But each one has to figure out what is your way of finding that balance. I think it's different for every individual. So I don't think what I do will work for everyone. So I think you have to find your way of finding the right balance. And I'm not great at it, so it may not be the right answer either.
Good question. Other questions?
Hello, my name is Dennis Brown Figueroa, and you said that through machine learning and generative AI, you're targeting individuals instead of like demographics. And I was just wondering like some of the strategies that Coca-Cola uses to like target individuals, and what kind of individuals do you target based on the machine learning and the data that you get?
Yeah, look, I mean, creating content and marketing that content to an individual is a different art than in doing it mass marketing to a broad group of people. I think with AI we're able to figure out what are the preferences. We do collect first party data, and that's what we use to interact with those individuals. We have hundreds of millions of consumers that have agreed to give us their first party information. And we buy some of that data from the Googles of the world and others also, as do most companies do. So we do a little bit of both, but the ability to target your message, to make it very personal, creates a stickiness. Our ability to personalize it to you as an individual. I mentioned the outlet owner. Imagine you're a 7-Eleven owner and Coca-Cola is sending you a message on your WhatsApp that is designed for you as an individual, not all the 7-Elevens in your neighborhood. That is a different way of messaging. And that's what generative AI is allowing us to do, because there's no way we could do this. We don't have the ability to go down to that level of granularity. But the technology is allowing us to do it. And that's starting to resonate. Because the stickiness that it creates, the loyalty that it creates with the brand is exponential. So it's a work in progress. but I think this technology truly allows us to get down to the individual. That's what's really exciting about it. I see a question there.
Thank you for your time. My name is Liam. You began by talking about breadth. How did you apply your previous experiences to your position at Coca-Cola? I think breadth is one of the most important characteristics for an executive to have. How have you used it to enhance Coca-Cola?
Thank you. So look, I told you I worked in marketing. I reported into a CMO at one point. I worked in sales. I ran a P&L. I think all of those teach you different aspects of a business. And I think whether you're a senior leader running technology or supply chain or marketing, you really need to be aware of the full entire business and how it operates to be really effective. I believe because I've spent enough time in some of those areas, it gives me a perspective of what does an individual who is looking at growing their sales, what are the challenges that they face. And I'm able to put myself in their shoes to understand their challenges. It may not be the only way of getting to where, getting to senior level of roles and be successful, but was certainly my way of getting there. And I do believe that I'm able to do my job more effectively because I have spent time doing different things in different businesses in different parts of the world. That gives me somewhat of a unique perspective because I have a combined view of all of those, and I'm able to translate that into what I'm proposing as innovation or change that we want to do leveraging technology.
Sure. Tom.
Thank you. Michel Benroche, I'm a faculty member here at Whitman.
Oh, that's why he was saying you don't get to ask a question? I'm like,
No,
okay, that's kind of rude. Why is he saying that?
So it sounds like data is a very important asset for you. It sounds like you're putting a lot of emphasis or attention, giving a lot of attention to cybersecurity, but a company like Coca-Cola probably has hundreds of supply chain partners, and at what point do you start worrying about cybersecurity exposure due to supply chain partners, and what do you do about this?
Yeah, really important question. The world that we live in today, it's no longer okay to just worry about your own company and its cybersecurity, because the bad guys are going to typically take advantage of the weakest link. And the weakest link could be outside of your control. It could be a third party that you partner with. I don't know if you guys recently heard about the CrowdStrike incident that became quite popular, and there was a massive outage. If you guys fly on Delta, probably all of your flights were canceled. Millions of dollars were lost because of that. It wasn't actually a cyber attack. It ended up being, originally they thought it was a cyber attack, but it was a software upgrade that went awry. And it was dependency on the third parties who had not kept up to date on their upgrades that caused the issue. So I think the lesson here is resilience beyond your boundaries is important. So all the third parties that you interact with, you have to make sure they are also as secure and as strong and updated as you are. So very difficult task for a company like Coca-Cola. We have hundreds of thousands of partners around the world. And we do have a plan. So we have categorized between high touch partners, medium touch and low touch, and we prioritize. But ultimately we have to do all of that. That's the world we live in. There's no other way of being secure and yet do your business in the digital world. And the alternative is you shut everything down and you become 100% analog. And then of course you're the world's most secure business, but you're not doing much. So I think we have to be smart about how we go about these things. But the risks are growing by the day. It's a very scary world. I talked about AI. We didn't talk about the flip side of the coin, which is all the negative stuff that can come from, I'm sure you guys have heard of deep fakes and other ways companies are getting targeted, and it's impossible to tell whether this video that you've gotten is actually a real person that you know and work with, or is it just a made up synthetic data that's talking to you? And you can just type something and create a video that's lifelike. How do you tell whether it's authentic or not? This is a challenge every company is facing, including us. And I don't know if anybody has the answer yet. We are still figuring out how to deal with it, and you evolve your understanding and grow with it. But thank you for the question.
I think we probably have time for one more question. So I'll ask that. If you think 10 years from now, and you think about the future of Coca-Cola, with all of the changes with artificial intelligence, what would be 2 takeaways that, give you kind of the oracle, you look in the oracle, what does Coca-Cola look like in this space in 10 years?
I think it will be a highly digitized business. We would have our manufacturing plants run digitally with minimal manual effort. There'll be digital twins for a manufacturing plant. Those are reality today. We don't even have to look 10 years from now. But I do see a business that is highly efficient and is able to deliver your most desired beverage at your arm's reach at any given time. And before you even know that you want that beverage, technology will be able to predict based on your historical data that we've collected that that's what you enjoy, that's what you want. So we'll be able to provide if you do decide to make that decision. I think it's a world that it's going to evolve. I think predictability, all activities that are predictable or are repeating and have some kind of a pattern in it can be optimized, can be enhanced to deliver a better experience. And it will be a lot more data driven than it is today. I do believe most businesses are becoming more of a science than an art because of the predictability, because of the data that it is based on. And it doesn't matter if you're manufacturing a product or a software. This applies to every industry, and Coca-Cola is no exception to that. What I do know, looking at historically what we have done, is we will continue to bring joy and happiness to the world, which is our founding principle. That's why we believe we exist. We are a total beverage company. We make a multitude of beverages for all tastes and all desires, for all ages, whether it's you want no sugar, no caffeine, high sugar, high caffeine, coffee, water, juice, milk, whatever you want. We are a total beverage company all around the world, and we will continue on that journey as we have in the past.
Great. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, your insights, a lot of the behind the scenes work about what Coca-Cola is doing, all these great initiatives to keep Coca-Cola at the top of the list among most desirable companies. So thank you very much, Neeraj.
Thank you.